freaky, like finding a space, man. I mean, that's been actually. We're just start there. How did you guys end up finding? Because were you working at Evolve already before you opened the movement mobility clinic?
Well, so the movement
Movement studio, sorry.
studio, like, so we were working at Evolve, like Curtis, myself, and so Curtis and myself, we started there when it opened. We were
Okay.
like some of the first trainers,
Oh, sick.
and he brought me back in the training game because, yeah, so he brought me back in the training game, and we can get into that after.
Yeah, we're gonna go back to the beginning of eventually,
Yeah.
but I figured, yeah.
So then Brian was a guy that he's been working with for a long time, and he's been really involved in like the FRS system, and
Okay.
you had your consult with Brian, right? So
Yes,
it's like,
yes.
so Brian and Curtis then were like, well, we want to do this. We think it would help. Like they first kind of opened it and kind of managed it for the first year.
Okay.
I got involved after I got my FRC because I wanted to get more involved in that system, try to understand things better.
Yeah.
And then from there, it was like I wanted to buy in, and I bought in, I guess what, December is when we formalized the agreement. And so like this year, I became like an owner because I was like, well, this is really cool.
Right.
I really like this. And so it's still kind of a new thing that I'm like the newest partner.
I didn't realize. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, very
'cause-
cool.
Yeah, well, for a while I was like doing a lot with the studio, right? And the intention was, and we were kind of in negotiation to be like, okay, well, I want to buy in, so I'm going to do more. I want to support this thing.
Yeah.
They also, I think, and then they would probably agree, like they needed kind of a third person who helps out, just to distribute a little bit more of the activities and stuff.
It's a lot of work
on it, especially with like Curtis has a really busy training schedule and he has 3 kids and that whole thing.
Yeah.
Brian has a kid and has a pretty busy training schedule with his clients and such there. So it's like the administrative things, social media. I do more of that, even though I'm not good at it at all. But it's
pretty
like,
good at it, man.
I
Like that.
play with it more, and I'm more interested in some of those things. So it fits well. That like they do something really good, and then I do some of those other things really well to kind of integrate and grow.
Yeah,
So.
for sure, man. Well, let's go back. Let's go right back to the beginning. So just tell me like a little bit. Are you from Calgary originally? Like
Born and raised, yeah.
born and
yeah.
raised. Jeez, there's not that many of you guys.
That's what I'm always told. I know a lot of people born and raised, but I hear that all the time, which makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
he's from the UK. I'm from Ottawa, so I mean, I feel like a lot of people in Calgary are just from all over the place. Dude.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Even when I worked at Rogers, there was lots of people, especially like the last little bit when I was in Airdrie. It was like people from Ontario were just coming all the time.
Yeah.
Alberta's the place to be, and
It is.
Calgary is the place to be.
I'm sorry.
I'm biased, but
I love you, Ontario. I'm never coming back. I fucking love this city. Yes, it has treated me far too well. So where'd you go to school?
I was homeschooled for most of my life,
shit.
actually. Yeah, so when I was really, really young, I was a super small kid, and so I got bullied a lot in school. And
Sure.
so my parents, more my mom,
Yeah.
my mom had already homeschooled my brother and my sister, and
Oh,
my
cool.
sister was still being homeschooled at the time.
Are you the youngest of the family?
Yes,
Oh, cool.
youngest of 3.
Nice.
My sister's 7 years older than me, and then my brother, she's 5 years older than me, and then my brother is 7 years older than me. So
not just the youngest, but youngest by like the
Yeah.
There's a pretty big gap between you
my
guys.
brother's 40. What I'm talking about? Yeah, my brother's 10 years older than me. Sister's 5.
Okay,
Yeah,
there we go.
because he's in his 40s and stuff. So yeah, so I'm the youngest. I was the accident.
I see.
I was the accident, not
the
planned.
miracle, the the bonus.
I was, I'm biased on that, but I'm also the best child. So,
Obviously.
I'm kidding. Both my sister and brother are awesome, but
Are you guys close? Like, are they around?
yeah, my brother's more of like the lone wolf. Like he likes to do his own thing and stuff, but we chat.
Cool.
As of late, as we've gotten older, we've gotten closer, which is nice.
Yeah.
He was a little more distant when we were younger.
The age gap. I mean, that must have been difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and he's always kind of done his own thing. Like, I don't know, he just always had that, like, independence. He likes to be his own, like, man, as it were. And my sister, me and her actually hated each other when we were younger. And maybe not hate is a little strong word, but, like,
Family. It's
we had a lot of, like, friction.
Sure.
But now we're really close. Like, we chat all the time and about
Sick.
just, like, life things in general and stuff. And so that's been really cool. She has 2 kids, and so it's just cool to kind of see this, like, I guess, seasons of her life, and then hopefully I progress into those things here
As you go.
soon. So
Yeah. The only thing I really miss about Ontario is my brother's still back there. Well, all my family's back there. I miss all my family, but my brother in particular, we're quite close. So
Okay.
It's a bit difficult being far away. But he's got 2 kids. They're out outside of Toronto. So
Okay.
my wife's family. This is where my wife's family's from and everything. So they have all the support systems and all that stuff there. So getting him out of that situation is going to be difficult. But one
Yep.
day I will get you guys down.
That's fair.
And then university, like, because you said you did gymnastics in.
So yeah,
Just
so I
tell me
guess
about gymnastics.
So I guess so I started gymnastics at the age of 12 is when I really got involved, and I started at like a
which is a little bit older even for gymnastics,
really,
right? Yeah,
really late for gymnastics. Like
okay.
most that make it really big generally start in like the sub 10, maybe into like the 6 and 7. It's probably as early as you really need to start. Some start younger than that, but I don't know if there's really too much value in that. It's hard. It's an art, depending on the kid. I think that makes a big impact on it. But I got involved in gymnastics while I was homeschooled because they took me out because I got bullied.
Yeah.
Started in homeschooling and then got into gymnastics and really liked it. And I was like, oh, well, I want to continue to do that.
It's an awesome sport.
I actually went up to my first the head coach of Altador was my first club.
Okay.
And this guy by the name of Miguel, he came in and was said to be like a really good like youth coach and stuff like that. And he was starting up a men's competitive program and wanted a high performance program there. And so I remember being like, I want to do like competitive gymnastics and stuff. And she's like, well, you have to try out. My mom told me that. And she's like, well, you have to go ask Miguel if you can try out because you are like, he's looking for younger kids to kind of build the program from like kind of the base level up. And then so I remember going distinctly up to him and being like, hi, Mr. Miguel. I was wondering if I can try out for gymnastics so I can try to be competitive. And he started when he was really old too, so he had a little bit of my story in that he's from Argentina originally and was on their national team, and did gymnastics too. Was like really old.
What's really old?
I think
for
like he was into his like 30s and stuff when he was still doing and trying to compete and stuff, which is old for male gymnasts. But he just like dedicated his life to like gymnastics and coaching and things like that. Like gymnastics is still his like love. But yeah, so he took me kind of under, let's say, his wing in terms of starting gymnastics, and that's kind of where it started. And then it progressed to, I guess I retired when I was 25.
Right.
Just before, like, 29, or just at the end of 2019 was when I kind of retired. And so through all of that with my gymnastic stuff, school just then made sense to do it from home. Like,
okay, of course.
It was like first,
you're literally a competitive athlete, so
yeah, doing it like I did it at the gym all the time before and sometimes after. My mom started working at a gym club too, so at the gym club because she would drive me. So I was like, well, I'll work there, do a couple hours. And so I would do school kind of mobile, and it just made sense because
very cool.
The first year was only like 12 to 16 hours that I got into it, but then it ratcheted up to, my peak of training hours was 30 hours a week. Ugh. So I was training 6 days a week with sometimes 2 trainings a day. Jesus. And so like a regular school schedule.
15, like.
Yeah, 15, 16, like up to, I kind of dropped back down to kind of the 25 to 20 hour a week in my later like 20s and up in the seniors. Just because their program ran a little bit differently. But yeah, from like probably until like 14 till 20, I trained anywhere from 25 to 30 hours a week. So it was like 5 to 6 days a week. Saturdays was really the only day we never trained. We trained Sundays mornings. We trained like Fridays. We generally had a 2-a-day on Tuesday and Thursdays, a Wednesday, Monday.
And how did this affect, growing up, were you like super keen? You're just like, were you waking up every morning like, yes, this is what I'm doing? Or was it like, was it difficult a little socially? Like, were you a little isolated, or did you have a pretty strong community with all the training?
I was definitely an awkward kid, that's for sure. Like, and I partly maybe due to like being homeschooled, a little less socialization. Sure. My mom and dad tried to get me into activities and stuff to socialize me, and like I did swimming, things like that. But I was not the athletic kid. Okay. Like I tried skating, couldn't skate, didn't like swimming, couldn't ride. Like I first rode a bike when I was 13 years old. That was the first time I actually rode a bike, and before that I thought I couldn't, and I tried it a couple times when I was younger, but I couldn't do it because I was very like not athletic.
So people need to hear this because like you're one of the most athletic people that I know at the moment. So this gives people hope.
So
like,
kind.
Like it's man, dude, the cartwheel shit you were just pulling on Instagram the other day, man. God damn. And the most impressive part of that was when you got up for full splits. You just no hands, just like just got up somehow. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I've gone. It's interesting. I've gotten more mobile through the training that I've done now and getting into the training space. Then like I feel more flexible in a lot of ways than I did like in gymnastics because of the principles and actually training the different aspects of things. It's just gone a lot better. But
fascinating.
I still thank you. But yeah, I know I was not athletic. Like I distinctly remember some things in gymnastics that it taught me balance, it taught me coordination. Miguel did a lot of work on that with me. Like I remember I couldn't I don't know what you would call it, like side skip. I couldn't like side skip and get my arms to synchronize so that it would go in and out at like the appropriate cadence. It was like I was just so awkward. Like that's how bad it was. I couldn't catch a ball. Like, you know,
Wow.
and my catching is probably still subpar for most, but it's like I can do it now and it's not a total disaster. Okay. So like I have some form of athleticism now. But so, and then when I got into gymnastics, that was the first thing that I was like, I think I could be good. Like I wasn't horrible at it when I was training with Ed Vincent, was his name, was kind of the pre-competitive kind of fun group of gymnastics before Miguel kind of took me under as like competitive. And then, so yeah, so I just like, when I went up to him, I was like, oh, I want to do this. I think I can do it. It's fun. And my mom was like supportive of it because she was like, well, I didn't stick to anything else. Like they put me in so many other activities and nothing stuck. So I was like, well, okay, he can do that. Good.
Go.
That's like your social aspect. And so I just stuck with it. Like as soon as like as much as you can love something that can't love you back, like I would say that was like as close as love to be. Like it was like my first passion. That was the thing that I wanted. I was single-minded. Like all I wanted was to go to the Olympics. It was really what I wanted. Like at the end, it was like, that would be so cool. And so I did everything up until I retired to basically pursue that. I put everything else on hold up until the end of my career. It was like if it conflicted with gymnastics,
it didn't get done.
It didn't get done, and that came to like relationships, job,
that's what I was gonna
education, like everything. Yeah. Everything was secondary. Technically, even my family, like my family was secondary to it and stuff. Which some might say is crazy, but I tried to pursue it.
I think any athlete has to do the same thing. I mean, you just you have to have that level if you're trying to get to the Olympics. There's no way, and I think your family probably understood, right? Like they're not putting it in second place, but you have to, if this is what your goal is, then that's what you have to do, right?
Yeah, like my mom always, like, she didn't care how well I did. She just wanted me to have fun, and like if I was pursuing kind of my dream in it, then it was like, okay, cool, I'll support it. My dad was also pretty good. Like he didn't really ask questions and stuff. He just wanted to make sure that like, okay, if you're gonna do it, I'm gonna spend money. Like put effort in.
Yeah.
Like
don't.
I'm not gonna pay for you to just squander it and like shoot the shit, as it were. It's like, Joe, and do your best and stuff. And there were times that even my parents thought like, you know, maybe I'm pushing it too far because I had injuries, things like that. And they're like, okay, well, like, is it really worth it? Like all the things you're doing to your body and stuff. And I was like, yeah, 100%. Like no problem, no question. And they sometimes were like, I don't really see how, but again, when you're in it, you don't really think about those things. It's just like, well, this is my path or whatever. Like I'm going to continue to try. And then, yeah. And so gymnastics socialized me for most of my life. And then after that, it was like, still had some awkwardness. I'm a lot better now and stuff. And I try to work on it because I'm like, communication is probably the most important thing that I've.
For what we're doing, yeah.
Well, and just like everything, you have to be a good communicator. Otherwise, it just doesn't really work in my opinion. You have to have a certain degree to it. And so I've tried to practice that to be a better communicator, because it was definitely something where I was like, well, I'm awkward and I didn't have too many friends and things like that. And I felt like there were boundaries sometimes that were because like I wasn't the social one.
And was it difficult sometimes just to kind of, it must be difficult to relate to people outside of, because most people, especially at 16, 17, are not putting in 30 hours of extra work on top, right? Like, was it a little difficult to, you know, it's like, well, what'd you do last weekend? Well, I fucking trained. Like, what did you do? I went and got drunk. Like, was it a little bit tough to sometimes connect with people?
Like for the partying thing, yeah, for sure. Like as I got older, so like in the beginning, you know, it was gymnastics and I did school.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I would get school done really quick. It would be like, it was kind of awesome. Like the homeschooling thing was, now that I look back at it, and I did do 1 semester of high school, but I thought it was dumb. And so I went back to homeschooling to finish.
Yeah, good.
So
good, like, good. High school is dumb, to be very, very clear.
Well, okay, I was like,
the fucking worst.
Yeah, it was like, so I did homeschooling most of my life, and for like up until June, probably the end of junior high, I did school from 9 till 12, and then I was done for the day.
See, why shouldn't all school be like that?
That's my mom was good with that, because she, you know, she would grind on me to, okay, get up at 9 and like let's do some work, and she would direct me. As it got older, it was less directed, because she was like, okay, well, you have to learn some of this stuff, but you have to get it done. Like get this stuff done, and then you're done. And so I would train 9 to 12, and then generally training was until 3 or 4. So I'd have a couple hours to do whatever I wanted, which when I was younger, play with toys. I liked. I had a great imagination. I still do. So I'm in my own world, like sword fighting, doing all these random things.
Love it.
I loved fantasy. Fantasy's all
well,
still.
I can see that I'm pretty obsessed with fantasy myself.
Yeah, and then so then I would go to training, and then I would come home, and as I got older, I became, I guess, the nerd in me started coming out. Like, I played video games. It was like, so I go to gym, socialize, hang out, do that, have fun, come home or before gym, play games. And my mom kind of let me have some free reign with that as long as, again, I got my school done and stuff. But then in high school, I was like, my buddies went to a place called Bishop Carroll. Some of the guys I was training with, they're like, oh, it's great. It's kind of like homeschool. You still have flexibility with your schedule and stuff to go in and do tests when you need to and stuff.
Oh, nice.
And so then I decided to try it and did like a semester, and it was great to chat with people.
Yeah.
But I was definitely less productive. And then I was also like, okay, I have to wake up at 7 o'clock, get ready to go to this place, okay, and then sit there for however many hours and do it. And like, I went to the lectures, which a lot of the lectures, because they would be like, you could have your own study time and do all your work on your own, but then they would host like a lecture at a certain time for the subjects and stuff. Yeah. And it would change in the rooms and whatever. It was maybe similar to like a university thing. I don't know. I never went to full university. I went to like a local college and things. So I just walked in my classroom and it was just like one thing for personal training. But
nice. Is that at Mount Royal? Or?
Elevated Learning Academy was where I went to get my diploma. That's actually where I met Curtis.
Oh, right. There's only like two...
Mount Royal has a personal training like diploma degree program, and then like Elevated Learning Academy has like a diploma program for it. I don't know if there's others in the city. I think...
But those are the main two, right? Those are
the two ones that I know of.
Yeah. Which is
but crazy. There could be others, and I'm not totally sure. I think the University of Calgary has something kind of like that, because I know... We see some practicum students at the gym sometimes that are with some of the coaches.
Right.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, so I woke up and would go to this place, and I'd be there for hours, and I was just like, at a certain point, I was like, okay, the social aspect is fun, okay, cool, but I have my friends kind of in gymnastics, and I get along with those guys. We're a lot similarly minded because we're in sport, and we're all kind of trying to pursue something to varying degrees. And so I did the semester, and I was like, okay, I want to go back to homeschool. Because I was like, why would I go to a place when I could wake up in my like pajamas,
do
all the work, just do it all, and then be done with it.
What it really reminds me of is like the modern day working from home argument. Like you just cracked that like as a kid.
That's what exactly like.
Someone asked if I was asked to go back to the office, I'm like, no, I have to do my work at home. It's the same mindset, just. From a homeschooling perspective.
It's just like, why am I going to this stupid building and do all this thing? Like,
it's the exact same mindset, just applied to a job. What I think is awesome hearing that even your family recognised you were capable, though, of just getting on with it.
That's like, such a good point.
Example, my mum just could not have done that. Zero would have got done. And my son, if I said, dude, you just get on with it, nothing will be done. But it's great that they saw that within you and was able to put that trust in you, and you were able to take advantage of it.
Yeah. Well, and I wasn't perfect in it. Like,
of course,
that semester I had, I was a little bit more lazy. So like some of the stuff, and then I was a little bit more lazy towards the grade 11. I was good, and then grade 12 I was a little bit lazy in some of the courses, so my grades weren't as good as they could have been. I ended up going to upgrade them because I was like, okay, I definitely half-assed this, and I shouldn't have.
I can do better.
And like I wanted to go to university. Like I still wanted to have a career and things, and I was still trying to figure that out in gymnastics.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I upgraded while still training and put it around my schedules. All right, the class is this day. Okay, cool. I can go to that. Okay, cool. Then it works, right? And I paid to upgrade. I did some upgrading at Mount Royal for some of the things.
Me too.
And so, but I realized like I was like, I don't know why people wake up to go to if they knew it, I knew, and like you just have to make sure. I think for sure if you do it, it's like you have to socialize your kid.
Right.
Because even me with gymnastics and stuff, like I was still awkward. And then I guess getting back to your question on like the alcohol thing.
Yeah.
When I was older, like I was a stickler. So like.
Okay.
I didn't think. Again, I didn't want to do anything that would, let's say, lower my performance or lower my performance, whether it actually does or not. It's obviously alcohol's not the best thing for you, but
it's not going to be helping. Yeah, you're not being hungover.
And so like I didn't go out and drink. Okay. I didn't do any like drugs and things like that and that. And I wouldn't even go out a lot of the time. So like even it impacted some of my relationships when I was on the national team with certain people, because again I'd be like, I don't want to do that. And so I wouldn't go out to social events and build like rapport with people. So then people thought, they had their opinions of it. It's like, well, why doesn't he come and hang out with the crew and stuff? And I remember the national coach chatting a little bit with me, being like, Damien, like you got to do more to try and be part of the team. Like you can't always kind of separate yourself out. You're not better. And not that I thought that I was better, but it was like...
You're just more comfortable.
I was more comfortable doing my own thing, but I also was like, I don't see why we go out and drink. Like I just didn't understand those things and whatnot. And didn't really understand, I guess, even the social camaraderie of that and how that is valuable and has like valuable to build that cohesion.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, interesting.
In that until like later on, while I was like, oh no, like this matters and you should have some fun and stuff like that and develop those relationships. Because again, you want the team doesn't work well if they don't like you and things like that. So there's those aspects that I didn't consider for a little while.
And that's why you notice that communication is quite important, right? Is that part of where that kind of came up? It's like, oh yeah, connecting with people is a big thing.
If people don't like, I was like, if people don't like me, well then it's going to be hard to, I guess, get them to vote for me in the situations of, let's say, like the coaching staffs, right? Like, you know, when you're going to competition and things like that, well, if they think they don't like me, unless my performance is like way above, which I was always, because I was older trying to come up, I was always playing catch up a lot of the time. Like I was trying to play catch up, trying to compete with the best, and you know, I got to a level where I could, and up to like basically it was like really up until the end of my career, I was like competing with the best in Canada on the events that I did, and it would vary on the day and stuff, but like, you know, still trying to build better rapport with all the coaches and judging and the team and things like that. So like if there are selections and things like that, there would be, you know, Damien could be a consideration for all of the things, not just like he's a good gymnast, but like his attitude sucks, let's say, or his personality isn't very good.
It's so cool because you think about something like gymnastics, and I mean, my wife's obsessed with gymnastics; is one of her favorite sports, and I've just heard from her. I mean, sometimes there can be quite a lot of drama, and so I think most people know that if you're going to play hockey or football, you know, it's a team sport. It's really interesting that you still need to have a good attitude, even when something as gymnastics, which is basically it is a solitary sport when it really comes down to it, right? I mean. To a degree, or is it still is that team kind of element still there?
So there is a team event.
Right, it's true.
So there is a team event. So it is an individual sport. Like it's a team sport, but it's also an individual sport. It's probably the most unique sport in that because like you'll have, you know, when you play your traditional team, it's like, okay, you have 5 to 10 people on the pitch or play or whatever, right?
Pitch,
and so you have. Like, pitch for football and like for rugby, right?
Respect, no,
for rugby.
It's rugby as well,
I've been watching a little bit more rugby. But like field, yeah. But like you have like people that you can rely on in the moment. So like, you know, you can pass and try to get away and then make your open, right? But like gymnastics, you get out there, you present to the judge, and you have your minute routine or whatever it's going to be, a minute to a minute and a half, and like there is no one to save you if you screw up.
You trip,
right?
Something.
But like in the team event, how it works in a lot of them, it's like, so you have your individual apparatus, you can qualify for finals all around, which is doing all 6 events, and then you have the team.
Okay.
3 kind of separate things that you can qualify for in the whole spectrum.
I didn't realize. Okay.
Yeah, and in like the team event, it's like it can go, I think generally like big events, and it changes all the time, but I think it used to be like 4 people go, so 4 guys would go up and do a routine, but only 3 scores count. So you have 1 score that you get to drop, and so if someone screws up, they don't impact the score. But that would be like for qualifications, like a world championships used to do, I think they would do a 3 or a 4-3-3 is what they would say. So so it'd be 4 up, 3 count, and then in finals it was 3 up, 3 count.
Oh, okay.
And so that's how they made it. So like everything you did if you're in finals mattered. Like you fall, your team takes the hit. Like you take a big deduction, like that's not normally, let's say, in your routine.
Yeah.
You know, that impacts the team and stuff. And so it's like what you do does matter if there's a team event there, because it also is not always, there isn't always a team event. Sometimes you're just going, you do your individual events, you try to make your event finals, which is top 8, and then you try to medal. Right?
And what were your events? Like, what's your forte? What was your favorites?
I did floor, pommel, rings, and vault were my specialties.
Floor, pommel, rings, and vault. Okay.
Yeah, my favorite was vault.
Okay.
And that was the one. Yeah, I don't know. It was just fun. It was fun to run at a thing, hit a springboard, and try to do as much as you can in like a couple seconds. It's not the most
dangerous one. I think there's been some.
I think in terms of injury, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the highest injury rate for both men and women.
And so tell me a little bit about the injuries, because I mean,
knees. I guess like for general,
for you, like, because I know you've suffered through some stuff. Like,
yeah,
it's
nothing. I think, you know, to be honest, I still have some. I had some injuries, but my injuries are not as bad as some guys that I've known, so I'm still lucky.
Consider yourself lucky?
Yeah, I consider myself lucky in that. So like, I tore my meniscus on my right knee when I was competing. That was a wild experience. It was at 2016 qualifications, and I had my I don't know how do I say it? It bothered me the year before, but I didn't really know what was going on. And then after I did the 2016 like nationals for the Olympic trials, that's when my wrist and knee were both like,
nope.
No, done. Like, you're not going to do anything. And then I had to get 2 surgeries in that. So I tore my meniscus. And then in my wrist, I tore a bunch of the capsular tissue, like a deep layer of connective tissue in my wrists. And then because of that constant like damage and inflammation in there ended up being scarring around like the nerve that runs through. And so I had numbness in these 3 fingers up for like a lot, like most. I would get it back and stuff, but it would have to warm up a lot. Like if I constricted here, I'd have like sharp shooting pains and stuff in the beginning. So like when I was doing rings and stuff, like I'd have to warm up my hand to kind of grip the ring, and then it would kind of fade and whatnot. I had to wear like big wrist guards and things like that. I got cortisone injections in this wrist. I had 4, and then I had an artificial joint fluid also injected into that to try and manage the problem, because it happened in Pan Am Games trials for the 2015 games in Toronto.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I started the injury the day before competing, doing nothing, which was very annoying.
Just tweak something, just live a normal life, and then.
Yeah. Like I came back from a trip. So I guess this will show some of the dedication in terms of maybe like how much I did. So 2015 Pan Am Games was coming up. There was a trials a couple months prior, if I remember correctly. I don't remember the full time of when it was, but I had this trials that I had to go to compete for Pan Am Games.
Yeah.
And this is the last trials. I was like shortlisted. This is the last trials. My sister had her wedding in Malta.
In Malta?
Yeah, a bunch of months before that. Okay. I think it was 2 months before the trials.
Wait, why Malta?
That's where my parents are from.
Oh, okay.
And so that's like our heritage is from Malta.
I've been to Malta.
Really?
I dated a Maltese. My first girlfriend, her family was from Malta, and we went when I was like 17.
That makes sense, because there's like in Ontario, there's a big Maltese community.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's probably the only place in Canada that has a big Maltese community and stuff. My grandfather was like the Maltese barber. Oh, like anyone Maltese, basically would go see him and stuff like that. Fred is his name. Shout out Fred Cheney.
Shout out Chef.
So he's awesome. But yeah, he owned a shop in there, and so that was his thing. But yeah, she had a wedding in Malta like 2 months prior to that. So I was like, well, I'm not going to miss my sister's wedding. That was like the first thing that I was like, okay, well, I need to put this. This is a priority.
Yes.
Go do this. But like my head coach told me straight to my face, if I don't train and I don't get confirmation that you're training there, you're not going to trials and you'll lose your carding.
What is carding?
Now, it wasn't like, he didn't say that directly, but he heavily implied specifically, which is fair. Like, carding is basically the money you get from the government.
I see.
So you can get a certain amount of money. It changes based on the funding, and I think it's gone up a little bit, but it's basically a tax-free payment that they pay athletes to help fund them.
Fantastic. I didn't know that.
It is really nice. It helps out. It's definitely not enough to live on, but it's really nice. And so in that, you do sign like a thing that says...
I have to be training a certain
amount of hours, and like you're not supposed to be doing things that could be risking injury and things like that. Like you're trying to treat it like you're a professional. This is kind of your job, right?
Maybe you can't ski or something like that.
Yeah, like stuff like that from what I remember in it and like reading the documents. But yeah, so they were like, you have to train and you have to send me confirmation that you are. So like I was in Malta and I would train 3 to 4 times a week trying to keep preparing and stuff like that. And we had to source out a gym. Like I remember my mom and I looking and sourcing out and then paying like a coach there to train me and allow me to use their facility. I was taking the bus to like the gym sometimes while my family's out doing things in Malta, just going to see and stuff like that, like see different places.
Go to Gaza and stuff, or
go to Valletta. They went to like I don't know if you went to the Azure Window when that was still around and stuff. No. They would just go and see different sites and things like that, and I did some of it with them. But yeah, so I was still training. So then I came back, did the training camp. Was done for the day. I had finished the plan, like head coach had given us the plan. I had done it, finished it like probably 45 minutes early. So did really good. I was like, was feeling great. Then he was like, okay, go swing on parallel bars, because at the time we had kind of thought maybe I go back to that event, because if I add in another event that I can score well on, it obviously helps my chances to go to events, because the more you can contribute to the team, the more you can be like a counting score.
Right.
The more value you have to a team, the less events you do. You have to be way more specialized and do really well on them to make sure that you're always counting and can impact the team, because otherwise, like, well, why bring a guy that can do 2? And if he screws up one of them, well,
we're fucked.
And it's just he only do 50% of his job. Like, he only do 50% of his job, where it's like, okay, well, bring a guy who doesn't have the greatest scores on all these events, but he'll be pretty consistent. He'll give us a score on all of them that maybe we can throw away or it counts. Right. In the case. So it just gives you more options, or if someone gets injured, right?
Of course.
Someone gets injured, you have to pull them off the event, let's say, like before the competition. It's like, well, Damien can't do high bar. It's like, right. So like you have to do it. Otherwise it's like big problem, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen it happen, but I don't think it happens as like too much. Like, I feel like injury in competition, I don't know. I remember I saw some things on vault specifically, but not a lot of things on other events. Floor sometimes, but it still is like not like a rapid pace of injury in it.
Okay.
Because there's like gymnastics is like kind of the thing where it's like, okay, well, if you're gonna go out to perform it on a stage, like you would have had to have done it many times before you would ever put it out, like especially on like a world stage or a big event, right? So like you're consistently doing it in training, you're consistently doing it in routines and such. Like I would do, multiple routines a week, and then practice the individual skills themselves and things like that, right? So like it would never be like, that's I guess another unique property to it, right? It's like most sports, like I do weightlifting now, so like the skills never change. Like your only job is to improve, like, okay, do the snatch better, do the clean and jerk better. Gymnastics is like, oh no, like you're still similar at movements, but it's all right, let's add an extra half here.
Right.
Let's add an extra half here. Now maybe let's connect these two moves. You add an extra half, now let's connect them together, as opposed to doing two separate moves for bonus and things.
Crazy.
And so like the scale of difficulty becomes like, if you screw up a triple back, and you go to send a triple back on floor, there's no going back from it outside of you doing like a back tuck and not actually doing it. But once you're committed to the triple back, there is no exit strategy outside of land on my feet or try to land safely. Right?
Commitment, man.
Yeah, so it's like there is no half committing in it. If you half commit, that's when you're going to get injured for sure. Like you have to be 100% committed to executing the thing you're going to do, even if it doesn't feel fully good, because some reps won't feel good. You're trying to save it in routine, whatever it is. And so that's where it's like you've done it a million times, so you know in the air how to try and adjust on how the landing's going to be. Like, okay, am I going to land good? Am I going to land short? Am I over-rotating? All of those things are things you...
Split second are going through
you kind of inherently know after you get through it. It's like, oh no, this is going really bad. Like, you'll know some, and it's like, just protect myself. Find a way to fall safely. And then other times, it's like I'm sticking this. Like, I'm going to stick it, and it's like, boom, land, and it's done. And you're like, I knew that. Like, I knew it was going to happen, because it just, the fluidity of it, everything was going the right way. There wasn't any kind of resistance, let's say, to it. The ones that you have that are really bad, or where you feel like distinct resistance, that you're like, uh-oh, uh-oh.
Fascinating. So then you were in Malta,
So I was in Malta training, came back for the training camp.
Doing some swings on a parallel?
Just swings on parallel, like light work, like really small basics. Didn't even flip or anything, was just doing some, they would call it like taps, where we were kind of just simulating to do a movement, and then at the end you would kind of it would be like a release move essentially. So you do some taps where you don't actually release, but you're trying to feel the timing of it. I'll be like, okay, I would release here and that. And then I woke up the next day and had just like, my hand didn't move. And it was so, like, in so much pain. So I saw the physios that we had at the training camp. I competed, but didn't compete well. Yeah. And so then I told, like, Jason, my coach at the time, I was like, dude, my hand is like, and like even Tony knew, because it was just like I couldn't, my pommels, anything to do with like supporting was really awkward.
How? Like, you basically have one-armed, like.
So, well, I would support it. Like I just taped it up, toughed it out, and went to town, and it was what it was. I did my best, and so I didn't get to go. That was a hard one, because I had really felt like, especially the day before when training at Gonswell, I was like, oh, I have a real big shot to go to like 2015. It was in Toronto. Yeah. It was in Canada. I was like, that would be so cool to do a home turf tournament and stuff. And so that happened, and then the training camp ended. I went to go see some people for it. They were thinking, oh, there's this issue, maybe that issue. And I didn't get any imaging done on it. I just saw my doctor, and I was like, okay, like 2016 is coming up. We have basically, it was like almost like a year from that. And I was like, what options do we have to keep me training? I don't need surgery. I need to be able to manage it. I need to be able to train appropriately. Yeah. And I guess how old would I have been? Because I'm 30 now, so it's 2025. So what is that? Like 5, so 25 minus another 4.
Don't ask me to do math. That's why I do podcasts.
Not like 22. I think it would have been like 20-ish, 21, 22-ish. Okay. Anyways, so I was at that age, and I was like, there's cortisone. And I asked him, I remember, Dr. Trin. I was like, I want you to give me cortisone. He's like, we don't normally give people that young cortisone. Like, you're going to give me cortisone. Like, I need cortisone. I need to train. I can't do surgery. I can't have 6 months off. Like, that's the end of this Olympic cycle. Like, I want to at least try. I want to try and make it.
Give me a chance.
Like, it's always like a long shot for me because, again, I had battled these injuries. I was starting late, all these things. But I was like, maybe I can do it. Who knows? Whatever. And so then I had a cortisone shot every 3 months to keep it going, because every 3 months it would fade, and then I would continue to train and stuff like that. And then at the time I was trying to do a new vault. So I was used to do, I guess, Souk 2.5, which is basically like round off on the vault, 2.5 twists, and then like land.
Sure.
I was trying to do a triple, so I was trying to add an extra half into that because if I could consistently do a Souk triple and my other vault, there was a legitimate shot if I do that on a world stage, I could make a finals.
Wow. Okay. Is that difficult? Like, the difficulty is high enough to
it's like if you were to do it and execute it well, there's a shot that you could make, like, for sure finals. Like top 8, and then if you did it really well, and who knows, whatever else happens, right? People can mess up or whatnot. Yeah. Who knows what could go, right? Wow. But it was definitely potential. And so we were training that, and I wanted to keep doing that and whatnot. We had attempted to try and do it a couple of comps leading up to it, but we never felt like it was the right time. And then at Nationals was when we actually did it. Like, we did it in training, and then I competed it. That was wild.
Did you land it?
I did land it.
Jesus.
I did land it. I did a bunch, actually. We did it in training, so, like, we called it podium training. And
because you're training, like, if you do this, you're getting to the podium. Is that
well, I was like, well, I have to, because this is the last shot to show that I could do it, right? And if I could do it well, then I can, because again, this is where the selection's going to be made. This is where the decision's going to be made. Was at the Nationals, the final decision for everything, right? And so we warmed, like, I remember Jason and I was warming up vault. We were doing it, working through. I was like, okay, it feels really good. And then Jason was like, okay, man, like, we're going to do it. Like, I think you can do triple. Like, we should do it. So then we set up a crash mat on there to raise up, made it a little softer. Yeah. And then we did it. And that was like, I don't know, I've never had, like, I guess, an out-of-body experience, but I'd say that was pretty close.
Wow.
I was, like, standing there. My heart was pounding. Even before the competition, I was like, holy shit, like, this is a thing. And so then I was like, all right, like, lock in, try to do it. We went, landed, like, a little short and, like, crooked, so I'd, like, run off kind of sideways off the mat and stuff. And we did, like, 3 of them. We landed one pretty decently, and then the other 2 were pretty sideways landing and stuff, but I did it. I'd competed on comp mat for the first time, like, done it. God, and so then it was... And then I think it was like 1 day rest, compete, and then I competed it that day, and that's when I for sure finished my knee off, because I landed, like, short and, like, corked into it.
That's it, right?
And then I was like, I walked away from it, because we started on floor and then finished on vault, because Olympic order goes floor, pommel, rings, vault, P-bar, high bar.
Okay.
And so we went to Olympic order, is what they call it. So floor, did well, pommels, okay, cool. Rings, and I if I remember correctly, I made all 4 finals.
Shit.
Yeah, I think I made all 4 finals on my events. I don't think I fell that day. It was a pretty good day. The only thing that was, like, I landed Souk triple in there, got credit for it, had some deductions for, like, short landing, but then I walked away and I was like, there are physio nearby, and I was, like, walking off kind of awkwardly because I was like, oh, my knee feels a little weird. Didn't hurt crazy, but it was like, this doesn't feel right. So I went over and he was assessing it, and he was like, well, doesn't seem like anything major is torn, like nothing ACL, none of those guys were gone. So I was like, okay, awesome. And he's like, but I was like, it hurts, like, back here in the corner. And he was like, well, maybe that's meniscus, I don't know. Like, you obviously would need, like, imaging for it to kind of confirm it. And then I was like, all right, well, whatever. Like, we finish competing and we see what we can do, right? Next day was finals, woke up, was more sore then, and it was, like, awkward to kind of use. We did the warm-up. Tony Smith was the national team coach at the time, and he was like, okay, like, you're competing triple again today, right? So we can see it, because we need to see it again. Like, you can't just do it once and then, like, that's enough. Like, you have to do it again, because if you want to make finals, you'd have to repeat, right?
Yeah.
And so I tried to warm it up. And then I was just like, there's no way. Like, I was running awkward. It just didn't feel right. And so then Jason was like, no, we'll just do 2.5. Like, we'll do your 2 vaults and we'll call it a day.
But you still competed. Like you.
Yeah, I finished. I finished.
That's what I'm saying. I thought you were saying it like, no, I didn't. Like,
no, I finished.
Just,
I did all my events. I did, like, we start, so final, started floor. Started
hell,
floor,
bro.
did it. Felt okay-ish on floor. Like, it still felt weird, but it didn't really hurt too much. And then did pommels. Pommels was really irrelevant. My wrist was still, like, kind of fine. It was a little sore, but, like, the wrist wasn't really bothering me too much then. And then did rings. Rings was basically irrelevant. It's only one landing. It was like, okay, cool, whatever. And then vault didn't hurt. It just felt like I couldn't run fully. I couldn't fully commit to some of the things. And I did 2.5. And then I can't remember what I was... Well, I think second vault was handspring double twist I was doing, or I can't remember if it was handspring double front. I can't remember at that time what I was training. Would have been one of those two, handspring double twist or handspring double front was what I was doing. And then I finished, and I think it's hard to remember. I don't think I won any golds on that one, but I think I podiumed on 1 or 2 events and stuff. I'd have to look back, but it was not a terrible day, not my best performance and stuff like that. But and then I came home, and that was when I was like, my knee was like done, and then my wrist was also like done, and it was just like both were like, no, you need to just rest. And then it was kind of like the journey for that year to just get surgery. I got a surgery in the summer on my knee, which went really well. That was super easy, and I've never really had issues in the knee since and stuff. So that one recovered really quickly.
The wrist less so.
The wrist took a lot longer. I had surgery that December. I had Christmas Eve. The guy
Okay.
I had like grilled the doctor because I was like, I got to get back as fast as possible. Like, I need you to find time for me. Like, I called the office. I felt bad for the lady that was the like receptionist, because I literally straight faced while I was on the phone to her. I was like, hey, so like, I want to get this done. So like, is it okay if I call you every day to see if someone canceled? Like, and I literally told her verbatim. I was like, if you need me, I will come in. Like, I know you guys say you need like 24, 48 hours, whatever, no drinking, whatever. I will throw up. No, I was like, I will throw up, dehydrate myself. I'll do whatever you need to. Like, I'll do whatever you need to. You don't have to ask questions. I will get to the state that I need to be in for you guys to do surgery on me if you call me. And so then I called her, like, if not every day, every other day, to be like, hey, did anyone cancel? Is there any opening? Blah, 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 blah. And then at one point I got a call, and she's like, hey, so he's willing to do, like, give you emergency time. Do an kind of emergency surgery and use some of his emergency time that's available to get you in. And so then I went in like Christmas Eve. It was at like the newest hospital down south, or South Health Campus.
Sure.
And so my mom took me, did the surgery. It went pretty well. The anesthesia fucked me up. The first time, it was no problem. I got up and felt great, whatever. That time, I woke up and I was just like, wanted to vomit. Yeah, it was brutal.
Did you say anything crazy? Because I said some crazy shit when I woke up from anesthesia.
I don't know.
You always say messed up shit.
Yeah, I know. You can imagine how bad it gets in anesthesia.
The first time I woke up from it, I remember waking up and my body was still like numb. So I remember like waking up and like couldn't open my eyes, and I was trying to move, and I could hear like what I assumed was the nurse like rustling in the room because there was no one else, and I was like trying to like sit up, but I couldn't. And so like I was just like shaking, and then the nurse was like, "Are you there?" And I'm like, and she's like, "Okay." And then she like raised me up, like lifted the bed up or whatever, and then I could finally like slowly like open my eyes, and I was just like, "What's going on?" But I didn't feel like sick or anything. And then I woke up and kind of got about, and then I spent more time waiting for the doctor to give me like the release than I did like recovering from like the anesthesia or whatever and whatnot. The second time, I definitely took a lot longer to like recover. I lied in bed for a while, gave me a ginger ale, like just trying to not vomit in the bed was that.
Okay, so I mean, obviously there's in terms of cost benefit after everything you've been through, do you recommend gymnastics? Like, obviously there's risks to everything. Do you think in terms of everything you've gone through, it's been a real net positive for you?
Yeah, 100%. I would not be the person I am today for sure without gymnastics. Even having the struggles and stuff like that, and again, my injuries. The major injuries were not that bad. I had some stuff that plagued me all the time that was almost more annoying.
Right. Just those little...
my wrist after surgery was one of the big ones, and then my feet were the other ones that were just a constant kind of pain.
Right.
But yeah, 100%. It would I would recommend it to anyone. It taught me. It made me athletic. Like I definitely wouldn't have been as athletic as I am now without it, because it gave me the ability to understand the coordination, kind of connect with my body,
connect with your body
a lot more and stuff, and have that
thing.
understanding to be able to like feel more stuff than the average person, or just connect to your biology, as it were, better.
Well said. Well said.
And so 100%.
Cool, man.
That's awesome.
All right, so let's move off from some gymnastics, unless there's any other. I mean, that's pretty concise. But so you move on from gymnastics. What got you into personal training? So how do we shift from, you're competing, you're trying to you're doing all this thing, and then you shift to what got you into personal training, and like what was some of the impetus there?
Of course. Also, first, I feel like I didn't thank you guys for coming. Like, come on, so I got to thank you guys real quick. The pause, okay? Thanks. Shout out these two for bringing me on. Okay.
Thanks so much for coming, man.
My first podcast, so yeah, it's cool.
You're doing amazing.
Yeah.
That was fascinating, the gymnastic stuff. So.
Like I've been so curious. That's why I'm excited to have you on, because I was like, there's gonna be some good stories in here.
Well, thank you. Hopefully my rambling is fun and cool. I'm hopefully trying to provide some good content. I don't know, but I'm just having fun at the very least. I'm having a good time.
And
that's all we want.
That's all. I mean, this is our lifelong dream coming through. It's just like, aside from the gym, like, okay, I love my gym, and I want to really make a real impact on Canadian martial arts as a whole. But in terms of just we just love fucking doing this. So thanks for being here.
You know something? A side note, actually, on that, really quick, with gymnastics. I met George St. Pierre, and I didn't know who he was.
So I first I wanted to kiss you, then I wanted to punch you. What do you mean?
Okay.
Tell the story.
So we were in the OTC in Quebec,
okay,
because a lot of our training camps were out there and stuff.
Because gymnastics is pretty big in Quebec.
Yeah, right? And Quebec, they prove they support their athletes a fair amount and things like that, and they're they have some extra benefits to being in Quebec. But we were at the OTC. They had the training center. We were a national team training center, and having a national team training camp. I can't remember what it was for, but if for anything, sometimes we just centralized to get together. But anyways, we were finishing up for the day, and Patrick, one of the coaches in Quebec, was hanging on the OTC, and then all of a sudden these guys walk in the gym and they're chatting with Patrick, and then this guy starts warming up on the floor while we're kind of leaving. And everyone's clamoring and kind of chatting and whispering, and I'm just going about my business because I have no clue.
Warming up doing what? Just stretching and
He was doing gymnastics.
Yeah,
he was
did not know.
Yeah. So he came in and he was warming up, and he was just doing his warm up and stuff, doing some random stretches and things like that. And Patrick was chatting with him and kind of coaching him and getting him to do some stuff. And then, so I'm packing up and I'm like, what's everyone so hyped up about? Because everyone's kind of freaking out, and they're like, dude, that's George St. Pierre. And I'm like, I don't know who. I literally never I never watched sports at all. I had no clue. Exactly. And I had no clue. And they're then they explained to me who he was, and I was like, oh, holy shit, that's crazy. And so then the team got a picture with him and stuff, and because Patrick was doing that gymnastics whatever as cross training.
Yeah.
He was taking George St. Pierre through the gymnastics cross training in that kind of era and stuff. And I think when we met him, I think he'd already gotten the UFC title and stuff, and then I think he was either recovering from injury and trying to get back into fighting. I don't think he was right at his peak or whatever in it. I think it was after he got injured and then was recovering. I don't know his whole story on it, so I could be butchering it. But
I think after his first retirement is when he got into gymnastics.
I think so. Yeah.
It was then
he had one comeback fight.
And won the
exactly.
So he came back for one fight after 10 years off or something. So
7 or 8 years off. Yeah.
And in between that time, I think he discovered gymnastics and stretching and
all
of those things. So that would match up time wise with what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, so he just he walked in and then they were doing their thing and stuff, and I had no idea who he was. So
that's so funny. How I've been crying.
I mean that's if we do maybe our 500th episode of this one, maybe we'll try to get GSP on here. But that would be the lifelong ambition.
Yeah, so I don't know if he might remember it because we were all in there and stuff. We didn't chat with him too much. We got a group photo with him, and then we kind of left to let him do his thing, obviously, because we didn't want to.
And what was your impression of the guy? What did you?
It seemed really cool. He seemed really chill. He was humble. He was trying to learn these basics and stuff, and it was obviously that he was learning because it was oh wow, he was trying to just learn the things, and I was like, oh, that's super cool.
Well, even just on the Instagram Stephen Wonderboy Thompson was talking about one of the reasons GSP was so good is because he was always a white belt. He had that white belt mentality. He was always trying to find the best people, just get his ass kicked by, and that's definitely that's so freaking cool.
Yeah, I remember. So side note on that, but yeah, so going back to your question,
personal training.
I guess like personal training, how I got into it. So I'd always been conscious in my training career that obviously I can only train for so long, be a gymnast for so long, so I had to find something to do.
Yeah.
The something was hard to try and find and figure out what I wanted to do.
Of course.
My injuries and more, I guess, like the chronic pain stuff. Because again, like I recovered from my injuries. This one, I'd say I probably didn't recover from very well. But like my feet were just like chronic. And there wasn't like, it was a plantar fasciitis and it would change and sometimes it would go away, come back, but it was pretty consistent.
And it's just the wear and tear. When you're doing a back handspring, I mean, what is it? 4 times your body weight is getting smashed onto like the balls of your feet.
Well, when you're like running, so when I think you're walking, it's like, you could correct me on this. I don't remember. I think it's like 4 times your body weight or force into like feet when you're just walking, and then it's like exponentially more when you're running.
Yeah.
I thought it was like 16 or 12 to 16 times to your body weight or force into your feet when you're running. Again, I could be totally off base on those numbers, but it's some large amount of force. And then obviously combining that with like
back handsprings,
actual like acceleration and full sprinting, and then loading into specific angles on it. It's not just trying to like flat feet. It's like landing at angle,
exactly
flat,
right,
and trying to like explode off and stuff.
It's crazy.
But I just had really bad like chronic feet injuries and stuff like that. I had a bone spur in my ankle and a bone bruise in my heel and stuff like that at times too. So, like it bounced around with stuff.
Excruciatingly painful. And you're still training. You have this bone bruise and you still have to train and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Then we never stopped training. Like it was just like deal with it, and that was all you did. But so in that, like, I got a little frustrated because a couple of my last appointments I had with a different doctor, like the one he distinctly remember most was like I sprained this, or what I thought I had sprained this ball joint, and I was dealing with like a bunch of pain on the outside of my foot, and they didn't really tell me what was wrong. They sent me for an imaging. He said that it looked like I damaged the joint, and that it'll like the only thing I could really do was wear shoes that have like a curvature to them. Was the solution that I was given, and I was like, well, there's nothing else. Like I can't do anything. It's gonna be that. Because it's like don't let your toe like go into extension. Like that's basically what he was trying to tell me without telling me. And then I was like, well, that seems ridiculous. Like, and that was when I was 25, and I was like, well, this is ridiculous. Like I don't want to live in the pain. And so then I'd seen physios, chiros, acupuncturist, massage, osteo. I had gotten like cortisone injections. I had gotten PRP, prolotherapy. I had gotten a lot of like
you ran the gambit.
Acute therapy to try and manage it and get it to go away and stuff like that. It would help. All it would help for sure, but it would never last. And so I always felt like there was something missing. And so one of the guys that I was training with, I thought maybe I'll get into the training world. A guy by the name of Remy told me his friend went to ELA and got their personal training diploma, and they liked the program, and they said it really helped them. So I was like, so while I was still training, I was like, okay, well, it seems like I was kind of on my way out because I was kind of getting frustrated with being in pain all the time, and it wasn't very fun to be in the gym by that point very much. It was just like I wanted to go in and still try to pursue it, but it was like I was only trying to make it to 2020 and then be done. Like I was like, maybe I can make it to 2020 because I had some good strides. I competed handspring double pike, which was another huge vault that only one other guy in Canada had competed successfully. Jesus. And I'd competed that multiple times, so I'd recovered and made some good strides to be like a good gymnast again, let's say, from my injuries after. So I was just like trying to stake it out for 2020, but the pain was ramping up, and I really wasn't having that much fun in gymnastics anymore. My coaches knew it as well. Like I wasn't as motivated, like, and stuff like that. And so I was looking at kind of, okay, well, what am I going to do next? Like, I have to figure that out. So that's when I applied to, like, ELA and started going down that route to try and see if maybe there's a training thing. Because I also thought it might be interesting. Like, I didn't want to coach gymnastics, which is funny because I coach calisthenics now, but I didn't want to be, like, a gymnastics coach.
Okay.
Just personally, I was like, I don't know, it just wasn't attractive to me for whatever reason. Even though gymnastics was awesome, me being, like, a skill coach for gymnastics just wasn't the thing.
Yeah.
It didn't get me going.
Smart to recognize that and not because I think too often people just like, oh, this is what I've been doing, so this is what I just should continue doing, right?
And it would have been like easy to find it and try to pursue it and stuff like that, right?
You had the experience, but
yeah, and like I had gotten some coaching certifications in it, like NCCP program stuff, so I could coach some gymnastics and stuff. But it just I wasn't really into it, and so then I went to ELA, and then
sorry, ELA is just
Elevated Learning Academy.
That's right.
Yeah,
thanks.
And so I started in that program, and I had just started it while still training and stuff. And I guess luckily for that, like me going to that, then I got to compete at FISU Games, and that was my last competition, which was like my really first big like international games types event where you got to stay on a ship, and we got to stay on a village, I guess, and there's all these cool things. It was in Italy. It was awesome.
Oh shit, really cool.
All of that, but then from there, it was like, okay, I did that, and then it was like December. And I was just like, I don't want to train anymore, really. I spoke to my NSO, and they didn't want me to go to, like, these World Cups and stuff. It works out that, like, with all the COVID stuff, I wouldn't have gone anyways.
Right.
So I retired, like, a month before the lockout. Or, like, the started lockdown things happening.
That's amazing.
And so I was just like, I'm done. And so that was when I was like, okay, well, I'm going to pursue, like, training and trying to see if I can figure out what's wrong with me or if I can do anything to impact me, to make myself not feel shit.
That's awesome. That's such a good motivation.
And so that's into there. Like, I can't remember how long into it. That's when I met Curtis, and he was the first person that really shined some lights on things that I had never really heard before, and no one conveyed it. If I had, no one conveyed it in a way that actually made me want to care, to see the impact. I was also looking for it maybe more, so maybe it was more receptive to it. But like, I walked in, like the first example I can give, I walked into there, I was limping because my feet were really hurting that day. Normally when I woke up, I had to roll my feet out and I couldn't walk in the beginning of the day because it hurt. Jesus Christ. And so I would like slide off the bed, roll out my feet, and then I'd slowly start walking, and I'd like be bent over for a while, and then I'd start standing up when my feet kind of warmed up to the day. And so I walked in and I was limping a little bit because my feet were really sore that day for whatever reason. And he's like, what's going on? Like, how come you're limping? And I was like, told him my story a little bit, blah, 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 my feet. And he's like, oh. And so then he just like started making me do all these things. And he was like, this is before he was like a guest lecturer for it at ELA. He was coming as a guest lecturer. And he was just like telling him I was a gymnast. And he was interested in kind of me saying I was a gymnast and my athleticism a little bit to it. And he just started playing around with my feet a little bit. He's like, oh, can you do this? Can you do this? Does this hurt? Does this hurt? Blah, 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 blah. And he was like, well, you need to start playing around with just being able to like actually utilize your toe, because obviously your feet are just totally frozen, like your toes don't move at all. And then he was like, you might want to get like a, as funny as it's a toe spreader and try to stretch out some of the like the toes and stuff, because they were super the nail sit between your like a toe spreader, so you could start spreading out the feet. Because he was like, I have a really wide foot, I have a flipper foot, but my toes were like so corked in. And I like, that was specifically when I was having a lot of pain into here. And he was like, well, you probably are, if you're not already, like you're probably developing a bunion because your toe is so pushed in that this joint is exposed. So it's going to try to calcify, and that will be really painful. And he was the first person that told me that might be like what it was. And I think it is what it was now, because I don't have that issue, and the toe is no longer like that.
Right.
It's like the widest point of your foot, which it should be. Your toe should be your widest part of your feet.
Like the outside of that foot, right?
Yeah, like your big toe and your little toe should be the widest parts of your like foot. The base of your foot should not be wider than the toes.
Interesting. Okay.
But like, yeah, so we started playing around with those things, and I started seeing some benefits, and I also felt like, I don't know, he just cared a little bit more. He knew, and as we went through the lectures and the things, I don't know, we connected on like a different level in terms of like, I know he knows some shit, and I think he can help me. And like whatever he knows, I need to get around him a little more, because he seems very much in the know with some of this stuff. And I think I can glean a lot to like be successful in this trade from him.
Especially when you've been going through this for so long, and you've been getting, frankly, kind of shit advice from a lot of other doctors and trainers.
I wouldn't say, like, I don't know if it was shit advice. Like, I wouldn't shit on them too much. I'd say, like, they just didn't know, or, like...
Incomplete advice, maybe.
Yeah, like, and, like, they're not trained in some of the things. So, like, there is a gap in that, like, between going through your doctor, you go to your doctor for diagnoses, and you go to physios maybe or chiros, and they provide their diagnoses as well, and you get like acute therapy, and then the return to play protocol was basically, okay, your acute therapy is done, I'll give you a couple exercises that you can do, and do them as much as you kind of want, with no actual methodology on how do you scale it up. And then it's like, okay, go to return to play, and if it doesn't hurt, you're good.
Sure.
And so, like, like that always like, and now that what's that I know now, that seems absolutely like a little bit horrendous, and it's like it's adjusting and it's getting better and better, but that's how I would see things. It was like, okay, we do the recovery, it feels better, you have some of these exercises that you can do, you can keep doing them. They don't really tell you how to keep scaling it up. It's kind of 3 sets of 10 a lot of the time, all this other random stuff, right? And so it's not like their fault exactly. They should be looking at new things, I think, and trying to take time, but they're busy. Everyone's busy. They got their shit to do, right?
Of course.
So I try to give them the benefit of doubt on that, because I'm not perfect as well. Like, I'm by no means a master in these things I'm trying to learn, and I want to be as best as I can in it.
So yeah, tell us just a little bit more about the actual program then, in terms of what you actually learned at
So
ELA.
in ELA, we kind of learned like anatomy. We learned some basic like methodologies for training and things like that, and how to progress people in terms of like linear programming, more like some conjugate stuff and whatnot there, and then some mobility testing and assessment tools and really basic stuff into that. And then we learned some business tools and things like that, and they gave us some skills towards that. We got to network with like Good Life, World Health, like Curtis was there on behalf of World Health because that was where he was managing and stuff and that. So we got some exposure into actually getting into the industry and whatnot. So that was really valuable, and I made some really good connections. And again, like without meeting Curtis from the program, with that networking, I wouldn't be where I am today, because we connected. He wanted to learn some of the gymnastic stuff from me, and he was really like, oh, this guy's actually like a gymnast. Because I remember he asked me on the rings while we were in kind of the seminar, while we were in the gym portion of it, where he was teaching some of the like training methodology stuff. And he was like, oh, can you do like a cross on the rings? Because you say you do the rings, right? You're like national team. I was like, yeah. And so like I remember just like I jumped up the rings, and then from hang, because I was training it, I pulled from dead hang to cross and held, and then jumped down. And then if you ever ask
By the
Curtis,
way, that is insanely difficult to do.
And yes, there's guys. I was trying to get it to other things, but yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't know if I can do it anymore, but I still can do a cross.
Yeah,
but
just to work into it a little bit more. But.
Yeah, I'm gonna do some training. Try to do some specific training for it. But that was when he was also like, oh shit, okay, this guy is a real deal in terms of a gymnast, because your average gymnast doesn't do that. And so, okay, he's got to be some form of a high level. And then we just kind of connected, and from there, he introduced me to the FRS system and all of that. And that's how kind of things have just continued to snowball, as we've just gotten closer as friends and in like business.
Yeah.
That it's like, I guess, I don't know, you're kind of running in life together in terms of like, okay, I have my business, he has his business, we're working as kind of a team, and then we obviously have Calgary Movement Studio together.
Yeah.
But yeah, the program was great. I enjoyed it. It obviously had some foundational connections that I made and things like that I would have never made had I not gone to it, which is always interesting.
As like communication, connections is everything.
Well, and just like, you make the one decision that ends up changing your life for the better, and you find like, and he helped, like, even the transition. Like I got lucky where a lot of athletes, and I saw a lot of athletes that retire, they struggled to figure out what they're going to do after sport, because it's such a big part of their life.
Of course.
He found me, he got me into weightlifting a little bit, so that also helped to kind of take my competitive outlet to be like, okay, well, I can still compete in this thing and do this and learn a new skill. It satified a lot of the gymnastics kind of technical analysis of it, trying to learn the technique of things and stuff like that.
There's a lot of structure.
Yeah, and whatnot. And then the personal training side, I was like, well, I can pursue my own business and develop that skill. So then I kind of had those two avenues where I could put some dedication into to actually develop, and then get rewarded for putting my effort into it, similar to sport. You put in effort, you try really hard, you can get rewarded for it, right? And so I had that kind of opportunity through that. And so it's like, yeah, my life is so good now. It's gone in directions I could have never imagined, and some twists and turns, but it's like, great. I'm so happy to be where I'm at, technically.
Well, I mean, that's one thing I was going to say. I've never seen you without a smile on your face. Every time I've seen you, you are upbeat, and just, I've never seen you, like, it doesn't seem like you have, I'm sure you have bad days, but you're really good at keeping that shit aside. Because what are you competing in now? Is that mostly what your competition now is? Are you doing, it's a powerlifting? Like, what kind of weightlifting?
Olympic weightlifting.
Olympic
so it'll
weightlifting.
be like clean and jerk and snatch is what I'll compete in and stuff like that.
Crazy.
So, yeah.
How's that going?
Not bad. It's like, got my beginner gains, which is super awesome. Now it's like where the work really begins, and you have to actually grind to try to be like a professional in it. Same thing with gymnastics, like grind to be a professional in it. Get your hours in, get quality reps in and whatnot, and trying to work into it.
Quality reps, and not just reps, quality reps.
Oh yeah. Like the intention has to be there. Like if you don't have the intention in it, even if the rep doesn't turn out to be good.
Yeah.
Like, if you just doing, like, if you have the intention to try and produce a good rep, but it doesn't go well, you can learn from it. If you're just going and slinging weight or doing whatever skill and you're not thinking about it all with, like, the intention to try and improve, it's a different thing. Like, your brains, I feel like, will receive the information differently. It's like, okay, have intentionality behind the movement and try to improve it. Even though every movement is not the same, from, like, a physiology perspective, it's, like, always random, and it's never going to repeat. Even if it looks the same to the naked eye,
It's never
the
gonna be
internal
100%,
side
right?
will never be the same in terms of how, like, neurons fire and things like that. So that means every movement is unique.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about what how you change how you see the body from FRS, like in terms of, because I mean, when I came to see you guys, I've been terrified of, because my mom and my dad both have arthritis, and so I've had a bit of issue with my hands and stuff like that, especially when I was working labor and construction. So when I came to you guys and said, like, oh no, you can actually work out your joints, you can actually affect this, I was elated, and I do your stretches like almost every day.
Sweet.
I teach them in my classes. It's been absolutely fantastic. So
Nice.
just tell me a little bit more about, like, how we can take care of parts of our body that we didn't even know that we're supposed to be working out, like the joints.
So when I met Curtis, like, he obviously started doing work on me with it. So, and he started working on my wrists and started taking me through, like, some of the cars that we've gone through with you, right? He did it for my hands and different exercises to try and open up range, because I didn't have good passive range, I didn't have good active range in my hands and feet and all of that. So I was like,
And you think from gymnastics, sorry to interrupt, but you think from gymnastics that you would have all this great mobility, but there were some things that you were limited in?
Oh yeah, there were lots of things that I was limited in, and even because, like, your sport will force adaptation to a large degree, right? Like, you're doing something that requires, right, your shoulders, let's say, to be in this position, and you're always going through it, like your hyperflexion, let's say, or, you know, a thrower rotates back and stuff.
Sure.
And it's like you have to whip your arm back. If you don't have it, you can't do it. So, like, you will force your body to adapt. It'll either be forced adaptation or, like, forced damage, essentially, right? And,
Sure.
and you'll probably have some combination, because high-level athletics, for sure, there will be injury. Like, at some point, you will have damage. Like, there's just no way. There's a cost to sport. I realize that now. Like, you know, I'd like to say I prevent injuries with the training that I do, and it's like, to some degree, yes, but there's going to be a time where you get injured, and it's like, okay, well, if we're better prepared, then we can recover faster. We also have a better approach to get you back into the game properly and
That's
have you less likely to re-injure that injury, because the most likely place to injure something is the last injury you just had. 100%, you're more likely to injure that thing. It's just because it's still probably it's still healing, it's still getting more robust.
Of course, well said.
But, so in that, it's like, that's where I started understanding the system, is when they experimented with me, and I had profound effects. Like, my hands don't hurt anymore, my feet don't hurt anymore, I don't have any of those issues. And so from there, it was like, well, proof of concept was with myself. Okay,
Sick.
well, I can improve, and specifically on these things where it was like, oh, I was told that I probably can't do anything about it.
And
I was like, okay, well,
it's
incorrect.
completely
like,
different
completely
now.
incorrect. Well, then, how much other things that people are told, not because the doctors are bad or anything like that, they just don't know. Like, how many people are told that, oh, you have this issue that you're just going to be stuck with it for the rest of your life, and you can't change it at all. There will be injuries that, you know, we deal with lots of people in the studio. Some of the stuff you cannot improve, right? You can improve some of the pain and things like that, but we're not going to get much change with these things. One, because they've been around for like 15 years, or they're permanent, like, fusion type things, and it's like, well, you fuse something, you're never going to get movement back there. It's fused, it's locked, right? So, and we're realistic with people, but it's like the amount of impact you can have on some of those things, or just general feeling, is a lot more than what people often think and unfortunately sold.
People accept that there are certain limitations that just it's just not quite that way. That's fascinating. And just cars. Can you just elaborate on what
of
cars
course.
is?
Yeah, I guess I should, eh? So a CAR stands for controlled articular rotation.
Controlled articular rotation.
Yeah, controlled articular rotation. And the goal of an exercise like that is to take whatever joint you're looking to use and trying to isolate movement from it, and actually understand, like, what is your shoulder, what is your hip, what is your knee, like your ankle, and trying to connect with it more on an internal level through movement, and trying to feel what's actually happening and trying to isolate that. And yeah, so when I got into it, like, I realized there was lots of deficits in terms of my ability to contract musculature, to find different ranges of motion that I thought I would have good ones, because I was a gymnast, I was super flexible, and some things I was, and some things I wasn't. Right? When I started weightlifting, I couldn't front rack like a bar at all. It was just, I was too tight and I couldn't get into it. Wow. Even though I do a bunch of other things and stuff, it just wasn't, like, it was not possible. I could snatch, no problem. I snatched my body weight the first day I kind of practiced with it, and with Curtis, he just kind of was like, oh, let's see how much you can do. And then we went to go clean, and he's like, you can't clean. Like, you literally can't put the bar on your chest, so we can't do this. So we spent like a bunch of months working to try and stretch into those positions and those end ranges and train it. And so...
And is that part of the reason that you think that people don't often get as much... deal with as much pain as they do, is because they don't often put in the work just for long enough? These things take I think they take a lot longer than most people realized.
Yes.
Do you think that might be part of it?
Yeah, a lot of it is like people don't know how to train these things. Like, even though like the FRSS system is very big, the creator, like Dr. Andrea Ospina,
fascinating dude.
So like if you ever hear like him talk, like I don't know if you've listened to his podcast, the Control Yourself podcast. Yeah. The way they talk about movement is like crazy.
It's bananas.
So like they just like live in that stuff, and he's the guy who created it, and he works with every major, like most major sports teams, like they work with the UFC.
They do, yeah.
Those guys go to seminars and teach their coaches how to train their athletes better. And because the system works, and they didn't create anything new. They come up with new seminars and things like that, and they're expanding upon the system, but it's all based on like science and the research. So they went through all the literature and tried to extract from the way I would say like the principles. I'm like, okay, how do we adapt? If you don't have passive range of motion, okay, how do we increase that? Okay, these are the things we would do. If you have passive...
Even just explain passive range of motion, like what do you even mean?
So it'd be like taking someone to like a setting, so like where like they're fully relaxed, and taking them out to their end range and what you can feel in terms of actual, like let's say rotation, right? You're talking about external rotation.
Yeah.
It'd be like me physically taking your arm out into external rotation in that, right? And seeing, how far can I get? Actually identifying where clear end range is, because for a lot of people your length tension curve should be 1-to-1, and you shouldn't have to, if you're taking someone to an end range, I shouldn't have to ever input more force to do it. If like if I get, let's say, the arm up to here and it's like hitting a wall, and then I have to I can push it further, but I have to clearly like impart force to do it, your actual end range is here, because that's where your tissue wants to go. It's like, no, this is where we want to go, this is unsafe. And so it's like feeling that out when doing an assessment. And then going from, okay, well, would you have what they'd say sufficient passive range of motion? Okay, well, then we can look at your active ranges. Do you have sufficient active range, which is trying to get it as close to your end range as possible and having strength within all degrees of motion, right? And then if you don't, here are things that you would look to train at in that, right? And CARS is part of that process. It's generally, you start with CARS to basically first identify, okay, what is my shoulder? What's my range of motion that I currently have, right? Because that's never going to increase range of motion. It's only to either anti-inflammatory, level 1, kind of just moving through. Level 2 is being where you're trying to actually have like an articular focus, so you're trying to make sure that you're not compensating with anything else.
Okay.
And then the third would be adding potential external loads, other parameters to make it more difficult to scale it up and get like a bigger training stimulus from it in terms of actually taking ownership of what your current shoulder is. Again, just harping on the shoulder.
That would be like more bands or weights or something like that.
You could do bands, weights. You could do a combination of even blocking yourself, so you're forcing restriction.
Just doing one of these.
And you could do isometrics, but even like, having your person lean on like a bench, let's say, right? So their chest is locked in, so it forces them that they can't rotate and things like that. So you limit their ability to cheat, essentially.
Right. Yes.
Right?
Make them work the muscles that they're actually supposed to be isolating.
Try to identify what your actual shoulder is, what range of motion you have, and then like own it.
Yeah.
So.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
We can even do, if you want, we can go through when we're done this part. We can just go over the mats over there, and we can just do like a couple things if you think it'll help just show what you're talking about a little bit easier.
Well, yeah, if we want, I'd be happy to do that if you want to. So it's totally up to you.
We'll get there. We'll do like a little bonus afterwards. Okay. So a little bit more about the movement studio itself, and just tell me a little bit about just how you guys what the real impetus behind it, like what you're really trying to accomplish with the studio.
So like Brian and Curtis started it, and now I've joined into it, and we kind of our want with it, and their want in the beginning of it was, so like the FRS system, it's really well known in the training space and stuff like that, but it's still growing publicly in terms of like the impacts, how to actually utilize the system. People are always getting better at it. And kin stretch is the thing that we run at the studio. That's kind of the bread and butter, and that's like the group training part of the system. Because so they created the system as one-on-one, do an assessment. What do you have you can do and what can't you do, right?
Which, I mean, very specifically, you've helped me with. You showed me that I did the assessment with Brian, but you've helped me with this as well, where I was really locked up in my middle spine. And man, ever since I've been doing the work, I've been doing it for like 3 months, and it has made such a huge difference. I'm just not sore in the same ways anymore.
And so it's like trying to identify, okay, the specific person, what do they have? Okay, cool. We'll train those things to keep them and maintain and maybe improve them a little bit. But what don't you have? Okay, well, these are obviously the things you need, right? You want to fight. Well, you need to have these things. You need to have these end ranges and control there, right?
Yeah.
And then, but they always got asked in the early days, from the way I understand it, like, how do I train it as a group? Because I'm dealing with a football team. I'm dealing with a group of people. Like, how do I do this? Because I don't have time to do a 15-person assessment. Like, and some of them do, but it's like, well, and I need to train group. Like, how do I do it in a group training? Because I don't have the time to manually manipulate everyone and do these different things that they like to do sometimes. And so I was like, well, then that's when they came up with kin stretch, which is like an order of operations to apply the system in a more generalized sense that can scale up or down, so that, like, you know, let's say an ex-athlete like me can still come into a class with some of our clients that are 90 years old and still get a training stimulus and work to improve you being just a better human. You connect with your biology better, improve some of your things and your stuff, so that when you go out and I do Olympic weightlifting, you go do MMA, they're just going and walking, living their life. They're living it like less pain, less injury prone, and have like better sensation to just improve themselves a little more rapidly. Right? And so that's really what the studio is all about, is kind of trying to bring that to the masses, because we get told all the time that when people come in and try a class, generally, it's like, oh, wow, this is really different. And it's like, yes. Like, what we're doing is really different from what the general, like, Groups X studio looks like and does. And then just in terms of training, it's a lot different, because it's all about building from the inside out. The way the body sees itself is from the inside out, and we're trying to connect with all of those things.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, the inside out? Because I love this. Just what do you mean? Because this made so much sense to me.
You know, anyone who wants to really listen to it should go listen to Andrea Ospina talk about that and whatnot. But, you know, I'll do my best. I'll do my best, because I'm definitely not as intelligent as him. But, like, it sees it from the inside out. So it's like neurology was first, and then you have, you know, your deep connective tissue, which would be like your capsular tissue. That's one of the deepest layers of stuff. And then you have ligaments, tendons, and then you get out into more superficial things. And even in, like, the way the body is, like, all rotational tissue, like, let's say the shoulder, the rotational stuff sits underneath all of the stuff that does more linear motions, like your sits muscles and things like that sit under a lot of the big muscles that sit in your back and on the front of, like, your delt and all of those things. And so, like, rotation sits underneath, so it's like a deeper layer of stuff. So it's like more connected, and it also inserts directly into the capsules. So in the capsules, what speaks to your brain directly. So it's like your neurology, your nervous system goes from, like, spinal column, sends signal, goes to capsule, then goes out into everything else. And the way your body receives force is into the joint first and then distributed out. Fascinating.
Because people think muscles the inside of my body, but really the muscles almost like one of the more outer layers of the body.
Yeah, and it's super important. We need them. Like, I had a buddy tell me this, I guess John DeWolf, a really good guy. I think I like this analogy a lot. I don't know if it's perfect, but it's like your body's a car. Right? And a car has multiple different things that make it work, right? You have your engine, and he kind of said the engine is like your red tissue, your muscles. That's the thing that makes you go.
Okay.
Right? Your connective tissue are like your brakes. They're the things that absorb force and take, like, kinetic energy and force coming in, turn it into kind of potential energy, and then in combination with your muscles, then convert that from potential to more kinetic energy.
Yeah.
Right? And so
fascinating.
That's why, like, you know, like, connective tissue is the thing that often gets injured first, is because it's the things that receive load first, and then it gives into the force input, and it doesn't distribute it appropriately.
But then we don't train that, though. Like, the thing that's taking all the force, we basically ignore and just say, keep doing your job. And
so most people don't train their connective tissue almost ever. Right? Even me as a gymnast, I realize now some of the things we do in it, it was like, okay, we're kind of training your connective tissue, but, like, there were aspects of it that were missing, right? Like, I had tightness all the time when I was a gymnast, even though I could do the splits and things like that, but it'd take me a long time to warm up into those things.
Like tightness even in the hips and everything?
Yeah, oh yeah. And
wow,
even like
okay.
like warming up into splits, and as I got older, like getting into the pike got more like tight and things like that. Like doing all of those things got tight, but I could always warm up into it. But then but then after gymnastics, I'd be tight again, and I'd have to repeat that cycle. Like, not that it's for sure thing, but like a lot of the guys in the FRS world would say, from what I understand, it's like that means your general connective tissue is shit. It's poor tissue architecture. So all the tissue because there's people like to think like, okay, you have tendons, capsule, and all of these things that kind of start and attach to the like bone to muscle.
Yeah.
And then you have just muscle. And it's like, well, no, like this is a mesh of connective tissue alongside all the muscle fibers in that. And so it's like, well, the general connective tissue within the belly of your muscle is shit, and it won't release. And so your muscle can't actually like, lengthen, as it were, or it can't get to like a more relaxed state to allow for like some length force to actually get into it. Because as soon as you stretch the muscle, there's a little bit of force applied, even in a passive setting.
Okay.
And so it's like your connective tissue is garbage, or just not very good. And so it's like, well, when you work on that, you can get past those boundaries where like, okay, I don't deal with that stiffness feeling all the time, and I can actually drop down into splits if I want to. Like when that video you're talking about, right? And things like that. Like, I didn't warm up the splits to do any of that. I warmed up my wrists. I did a couple cars and things like that. Warmed up some things to try and warm up my hips. Then I was like, all right, let's try this. And then I just started doing some flares. And I did a couple sets of flares. And then boom, 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 did the whole kind of flare up, flare down, right?
So are you saying you think you're in better physical shape? I assume like a better human now than you were
100%.
when you were at your peak of your competing career? That's fascinating.
Because I remember like losing some connection on being able to like, oh, I feel like I can't squeeze this muscle as well.
Right.
Like I can't be as tight as I need to be in certain things. But like I could never really understand like how to train it and get that back. Like it was just kind of like try to squeeze it more. And it's like, well, no, it doesn't work. Like I can't find it. I can't feel it. And so like even that, like giving people better affluence to actually be able to like feel what's working is a huge thing. Because if you can't feel it, it's really hard to work something you can't feel. It may still be working some of the movements because it has to, otherwise the movement wouldn't occur.
Of course.
It'd be like if your glutes don't work, like your glutes don't turn on and they were fully relaxed, well then you can't you can't move.
Yeah, you can't go to plan
you can't
B.
locomote very well if you don't have your glutes turning on to actually stabilize. You may not be able to feel them very well while doing it. Okay, sure. But like they're still going to work because you can't move otherwise.
Yeah. Right.
And so certain things like that where it's like the verbiage isn't perfect and people don't mean it like that, but people take it as like, oh, my glutes don't work when you hear that in like the training world. It's like, well, no, you just probably can't feel them very well. They're still doing a job. Maybe they're not doing the job very well. Sure, you're compensating. They might not work. Yeah. But they're still going to participate in the activity of life, whether you have any connection to them or not.
And is that why it's so important to a degree to use the right muscles? Because if we don't use the right muscles, we're going to use something's going to compensate, and it's usually not for the best.
Yeah, like you want to have as much control of your stuff as possible, so that when the inevitability of life is going to take you to like end ranges. It's going to throw something at you that you never expect. We don't live in like a very nice refrain thing. Even like, okay, we're not just like bicep curling here and that's the only range of motion for your bicep, right? You're doing all these different things and there are always different stresses on it. So it's like the better you prep your body for just life in general, which is going to be in end ranges, and that's where injury is going to most likely occur. It's like, well, you can have less injury. You're less prone to those things and you're just more prepared to act.
Yes.
And that's...
I guess it's like the analogy of like when I think of almost like from office health and safety videos when they tell you to lift with your legs. So it's the point, like you're still lifting, but like what you're using to make sure that that's safe is your legs. If you just lift your back will bow out quickly and stuff like that, but your legs won't. So it's the same kind of, I guess, philosophy. It's just with what you're saying is just that's a simplified version of it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of subtle.
If you do it properly, your legs will be doing the work, not your back, but you're still doing the same thing.
100%. Yeah, it's like, well, I 100% agree with that. It's just, training people to actually do the movement. Use the things that should be the prime movers, let's say, into it, and actually be the prime movers, so then you can equally distribute force appropriately. Because force will bleed to the thing that wants to do the most work, and that's where you're going to injure something, right? In the place of the back, it's like, the most common one is like when you do an assessment on a spine that I've seen, it's like, well, people... And as you do more assessments, Curtis, Brian, and myself get better at identifying, like, okay, I see someone's spine move, and it's like, well, only this vertebrae wants to move. And I'm like, do you ever have back pain like here? And they're like, yeah. Yep. How'd you know that? And I'm like, oh, because like that's the only vertebrae that moves. So that's the only thing that's going to take load. Everything's going to go there, and it's going to be your fulcrum for force. And then like bulge disc, whatever, right? Or you take someone in a hip, and it's like one hip does like, you know, especially like swinging sports and stuff. It's like, oh, one hip does internal rotation and one hip does external rotation. Well, from doing that, I can basically go like, oh, do you do these sports and things like that? And it's like, which way do you swing? And it's like, I already know the answer because the hip tells the story in terms of, again, the force adaptation. One hip has to do one job, the other hip does the other job really well. But then they don't do the inverse.
Yeah.
And so, like, you'd want to try and have as balanced of it as possible, even though we're inherently imbalanced. It's like trying to have as close to the similar signs, even though that you might not, right?
But no one's really balanced, right? Like even like gymnastics is a very balanced thing a lot of the time.
You'll have your dominant side. You have your dominant side and stuff like that, so you're going to lean on it more and whatnot, but you're trying, like ideally you want to have as balanced, you know, musculature and connection to things as possible.
Cool.
So.
That's awesome, man. I mean, it seems like you guys are getting busy all the time from like a... because I'm always interested in marketing. From a marketing perspective, what do you think has been one of the biggest challenges that you've come across, like in terms of just getting your message out there?
Building, like, again, like the brand of the system and Kinstretch and like what it is that we do, because we still get it. And it's like yesterday I had someone walk into like the movement studio, right? And we've been around for a while and stuff, and he's a member of like Evolve Royal Oak, really great guy.
Nice.
So he walked in and he was like, oh, like I don't know, I didn't really know what you guys do, right? And so we get that a lot in terms of it. And it's like, oh, they think like we do stretching classes and mobility classes, and that is what we do. But everyone walks into the class for the most part, especially in the beginning, even including myself, like, oh, I understand, I'm flexible, I'll be able to crush this. And some of the things I'm good at, some of the things ruins my life. And it's like, this sucks, but whatever. And so like they think they know what like our mobility training looks like. And it's like, oh, I know how to train mobility. And then they come to the class and it's like, I didn't have a clue.
And that was me. I've really been blown away by the work you guys are doing, for sure.
And so trying to get that, and it is working. We're getting like the name out there. It's growing in terms of people understanding like that we are different. We're trying to do something different, and we care about what it is that we do, and we want to help people kind of improve and get better in that manner. And so that was like really the biggest challenge, is just trying to get people to understand like
what exactly it is that you guys do.
Because mobility and stretching and all of that has kind of been harped on. And in some regards, like bastardized in some cases. So people think they know what like mobility training is, and that it should be super easy. And I said, no, mobility training is like strength training. That's all. They are the same thing. And
it's just when you really focus on the muscles, and when you're focused on basically everything else, almost, right? All the supportive and connective stuff.
Yeah, and like your neurology doesn't care from like like your neurology doesn't care if it like you don't need external load to have a high neural drive.
Explain it a little.
So like, and I think this is in one of the Control Yourself podcasts and stuff like that they talk about this, but and I could be wrong, and maybe I'm making this up, but I distinctly remember them talking about it. Like, people think like, okay, maximum strength work, you like a squat, right? That's like that's a pinnacle of it. Oh, doing a 600-pound squat. Okay, you're going to have an extremely high neural drive, especially if that's like that person's 1 rep max, right? It's going to be crazy neural drive to get the job done. And you have 1 and you're done. If you're doing max effort work, let's say pails and rails to try and open capsular space, it has to be max effort. Most people don't understand what their max effort is because they don't ever work in that space. But you should be able to, if you're good at it, drive enough neurological tension that like the neural drive, if they were to track it, will be very similar to the neural drive for that same 600-pound squat.
Okay.
But one has
their limit for them. That's their limit.
Yeah, and you're challenging your brain to just try to contract and find as much recruitment as possible in whatever position, and you should be able to do that. If you can't, you know, there's some gaps. But people just think about strength work as like, oh, you have to have external load, and that's how you get like, let's say, stronger and stuff. It's like, well, no, that the neural drive is the same, so it's training neurology and it's strength training.
That's so freaking smart. Can you just describe Pails and Rails?
Pails and Rails stands for progressive angular isometric loading, and then Rails would be regressive angular isometric loading.
Right.
That specifically, there's many reasons for it, but the main reason you kind of get into it is when you're trying to open up capsular space, so increasing the ability for like basically most joints to rotate. you would do max effort pales and rails to try and open up and actually change your capsule, because that's the deepest layer of connective tissue.
I think I need more of those for my shoulders. I think.
Yeah, if you don't have enough like passive range of motion, like pales and rails is where you're going to do at high input, because capsular tissue only responds to that because it's so deep, and you have to get enough force to kind of bleed into the capsule. So like rotational tissue, as I said before, like connects and inserts and blends into your capsule.
Yeah.
And so by training rotational stuff, you can then start applying force through the tendons and everything pulling on the capsule to actually get the capsule to adapt.
And
right?
Which is the part that most people don't get to, right? You train the muscle, but you don't get to that point where you're actually putting enough strain into the actual capsule for it to progress or adapt.
Yes, 100%.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Freaking nuts, man. Okay, so I do want to start wrapping up here in a minute, but we're going to go do some stuff on the floor here in a minute, but I do want to have Curtis on because I think I want to do the same thing. Yeah, I think he's had his own podcast. And stuff like
yeah,
that,
he did a podcast for a while.
Yeah,
one of his buddy.
But if I get him on, can you just give me maybe an embarrassing story that I can ask him about, something I can kind of like tease and poke him about?
Embarrassing story? Oh man, you're gonna put me on the spot like that, dude. I don't know if I know.
Think about it. If you come up with something before we're done, just
I'll have to think about it. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. I guess that's true. Yeah. Okay, I'll think about that. That's true.
Think about it. Think about it.
Okay, I'll think about it. See if I can find. I should be able to.
Okay, I'm just gonna finish with this. What's been the most surprising thing about the movement studio? Because I mean, it's tough opening your own. I can attest to it's tough opening your own a business and stuff. Is there anything been particularly surprising that really stood out about everything you guys have been doing with the studio?
I guess like when it first started and stuff like that, and being kind of like on, let's say, more of the outside, it seemed like an interesting idea and stuff. Being more involved in the running of it, and then seeing some of the results and kind of getting involved in it, that's I guess been the coolest thing, is seeing how much change we're actually able to facilitate in it for some of the clientele. Like that's been the most motivating thing in it. It's taken longer to build for sure than I think what Curtis and Brian might have wanted in it, because they thought we might have gone a little more uptick with like group acts and stuff, but again, that boundary of like people thinking they know what we do, and then not like trying it specifically. It's just trying it is the biggest thing. That's what we always offer the free session, is so people can experience it.
First free session, free consultations, by the way.
Check out Calgary Movement Studio.
Involve Strength Royal Oak.
Yeah. And then you can come do a class with Javi too. So
they're literally my neighbors. So
we are literally neighbors.
Yeah. They've heard my loud ass voice yelling at people way too many times. Now we have better sound insulation between our businesses. But in the early days, there have been some issues.
So just the impact that we've been able to actually have with it is pretty cool.
That's so cool, man. Yeah. And it's only going to grow. You guys are doing better all the time. So brother, thanks so much for coming.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
A little bit here. And anything you want to say about the gym, or anything obviously that you have your Instagrams, but if people are looking for you, like where should they reach out? Where can people find you?
Generally, it's on Instagram with it's Damien_Cachia is I think the Instagram handle. I should probably know that off my heart, but on there
we'll put it in the show notes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We'll post it there.
You can obviously DM me, and I try to get back to everything on that. I'm almost always getting back. And then there is also like an applying for coaching thing, for consultations, stuff like that if they want. Otherwise, just like come into Calgary Movement Studio. I'm there most of the time.
You're always there.
And Evolve. We're always there at Evolve now. So, and then I just want to say thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure to kind of meet you. You've been an awesome neighbor to have coming into like the gym space and stuff like that. The studios that we have there with all of it are pretty cool. We have a pretty cool little dynamic.
I love it, man.
In there, and the gym in general is a pretty cool space. So it's like,
thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Stuff's awesome to have it fill out with like another good tenant. So
hopefully trying to high tides raises all ships, right? That's what we're going for.
That's it. Awesome.
Thanks so much, man.
Let's go.